My name is Kimberly Richards, and I am with Justice System Partners. And today we will be hosting the PET Network webinar about pretrial release options and supports. And so to kick us off, I would like to give a little backstory about what the PET Network is. But as I'm doing that, continue to introduce yourself in the chat. Okay, so the PET Network. As you all know, jails have become warehouses for people who are poor, people who may lack housing, people who may be experiencing different mental illnesses, different addictions. In addition to that, they starkly reflect America's long history of racism. And so we know jails are misused and overused in ways that are damaging to families, that devastate communities, and ultimately that lead to more crime. And so in 2015, the MacArthur Foundation founded the Safety and Justice Challenge, otherwise known as SJC. And this initiative aims to change the way that America thinks about and uses jails. And so the foundation has invested in over 40 local criminal justice systems across the country that are working to improve public safety, eliminate racial and ethnic disparities, promote stronger, healthier communities, and reduce the financial costs that are associated with incarceration. So the Safety and Justice Challenge invests in locally developed, equity-based solutions that take a balanced approach to protecting public safety. And the goal? To support policies and practices that will safely reduce the jail populations by around 50% across all SJC jurisdictions by 2025. And so as a part of the SJC, we have the Pretrial Equity and Transformation Network, otherwise known as the PET Network, which is a peer learning network. And the goal of this learning network is to elevate the SJC sites that are engaging in meaningful front-end transformation work and provide opportunities for other sites and other jurisdictions to learn from this work. So this webinar series that we host provides and brings together technical experts, people who have lived experience and lived expertise, as well as practitioners who can discuss new and promising programs and practices and share their lessons learned with everybody else in this awesome community of folks. And so with that, I'd like to just run through a little bit of what we have going on today. And I see you guys are go ahead and introducing yourselves in the chat, so continue to do so. But let's just talk about what we have going on in today's webinar series. So as I said, we're going to talk about pretrial release options and supports. So to get that started, my colleague Shannon Magnuson is going to unpack the evidence behind pretrial release options. And in addition to that, we have some incredible panelists who are joining us today from the City and County of San Francisco, California. They are coming from the San Francisco Pretrial Diversion Project. In addition to that, some also amazing panelists who are coming from Pima County, Arizona, from the Department of Justice Services Transition Center. And so our panelists are going to do presentations about their programs, share about the incredibly innovative work that they're doing. And then after that, we will have a facilitated discussion with all of our panelists and do some Q&A with the audience. And so there is a Q&A feature here in the webinar where you can submit your questions to the presenters all throughout the webinar today. We encourage you to use it. And for those of you who don't have questions, but see questions that are interesting that you would also like to have answered, please feel free to upvote those questions that you're most interested in, and we will ensure that we get to that question and make sure we have that conversation. Our panelists are also able to respond in the Q&A feature, but we will make sure to save time for them to respond to any questions later in the webinar when we get to the discussion. And in addition to that, if you don't have any questions, but you want to participate in the conversation, please do so. You can use the chat to throw your comments, to continue the conversation with each other going on there. And we highly encourage you to do so. Your expertise matters, your insight matters, and we want to ensure that your voice is included in the conversation today. And for those of you that were jumping on a little bit late, we do have the closed captioning feature. So if you would like to have closed captioning, just go ahead and click that button at the bottom and you will have that pop up for you. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Shannon Magnuson from Justice System Partners, and she's going to unpack the evidence behind pretrial release options. So Shannon, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kimberly. I'm so excited to be here and talk more about this about this work, about what it means to bring equity to the pretrial space, what it means to do front-end transformation work. Before our lovely guests from San Francisco and from Pima County talk about their really innovative programs, I'm going to give us kind of the groundwork and set some foundation and level setting about the evidence that we do know about different pretrial release options and supports currently. So with that, we know that people get arrested and then they get booked. And the process that really happens is that following a booking, there's kind of arraignment. Following arraignment, there's various hearings that people go to. Following hearings, there might be a plea hearing specifically, or really sentencing. And what we know is that at sentencing, folks are either sentenced to, a custody setting of jail or period of incarceration in jail or in prison, or sometimes in a community setting like probation. And what the evidence has suggested is that when folks are detained, they can be detained for a small amount of time or a long period of time or the whole period of time. What we know is that when folks are detained, we often see that they come to plea agreements faster, which isn't necessarily better. And it means that often what they're offered in those plea agreements are not as good as if they had been released. What we also know is that these folks who remain detained after booking also tend to have more harsh sentences, and those sentences tend to be more and for periods of incarceration. And those periods of incarceration or in community settings tend to be longer. The evidence suggests that this is true at every stage, and we start to see this over and over again for folks that are detained. And the evidence also suggests that this is even more true for Black folks, for Hispanic folks, for disabled folks, for poor folks, for queer folks, and for folks that identify at the intersection of those identities. When folks are any one of those different identities, we know that the collateral consequences to them, either immediate by way of loss of employment, loss of income, loss of custody, loss of treatment, loss of shelter, all of these things are amplified for minoritized populations. But we know there is a different option. We know that the evidence suggests that we should be releasing people more. And oftentimes that might mean release on reconnaissance, but not as often as we'd like. What we mostly see is a lot of pretrial supervision release. We see a lot of EM or GPS monitoring in this pretrial space after arraignment. We see a lot of UA testing. But there has been some research that has been done around these spaces. We're going to unpack today a little bit about what the research tells us. So related to pretrial supervision, there have been 8 big studies about pretrial supervision, and it might surprise you what the research says. There are 4 that say that pretrial supervision, so this monitoring component of pretrial, has improved court appearance. That's true. 4 of 8 studies told us that, which is a little mixed. What we also know about those studies and what researchers say is that it's actually kind of unclear if it's the monitoring itself or what actually happens from the monitoring, and that folks are non-compliant. They often receive reporting to the court. That reporting to the court often results in a bench warrant. That bench warrant often returns to returning to custody. And then people are able to get to court because they've returned to custody. So a lot of researchers are saying, yes, it does improve court attendance. And it's really hard to tease out if that improved court attendance from pretrial supervision is actually the monitoring part, or because we've accidentally sent people back to jail and that's why they're getting to court. What the research does say is that there's actually no effects on pretrial supervision to prevent pretrial arrests. 3 studies say that they actually found no improved court appearance from pretrial monitoring. 1 study found absolutely no effect, and another study found an explicit and direct link between pretrial monitoring and increased technical violations and returns to jail. So in lots of spaces, we are using pretrial surveillance and pretrial monitoring to help people get to court, but the research suggests that actually it doesn't really do that, and oftentimes, if it does, it's by way of returning folks to custody. And in reality, pretrial surveillance or pretrial monitoring is almost kind of delayed incarceration and actually might be creating periods of instability for folks because it's returning people to jail. That doesn't mean that pretrial as an agency isn't important or isn't useful. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means. But by way of monitoring, the research is suggesting that it actually doesn't help people get to court. We also see a lot of people being assigned electronic monitoring or GPS monitoring. And what the research says is of the 5 studies that have been done on this work, only 1 study has actually found an increase in court attendance for people who were assigned to electronic monitoring. But again, like pretrial monitoring, the research couldn't actually figure out if it was the electronic monitoring that was actually getting them to court or the idea that they were actually having technical violations on their electronic monitoring, sending them back to jail, that was getting them to court. But the other 80% of the research that's been done on electronic monitoring actually says that this does not improve court attendance. That's not to say that electronic monitoring and GPS isn't important and useful in other ways. It might be really important for protective orders or in instances where there is domestic violence or an explicit victim. But assignment of electronic monitoring as a way to get people to court or a way to prevent pretrial arrests, the research does not support that that is true. The same is also true for urine analysis testing. What we found, and this is going to come as no surprise to anyone, what the research shows is that when individuals test negative for UA testing, they're likely to get to court. And when individuals test positive on their UA testing, they're unlikely to get to court. I think nobody is surprised by this, right? If you know that you're not using drugs, you're going to happen to go to court. If you know that you are using drugs and the court knows that you're using drugs, you might be less inclined to go to court. That makes complete sense. And so when we're assigning UA testing to folks, we often don't know who is or is not going to test positive. And the reality of the situation is that we cannot expect folks to be sober or reduce their drug use or substance use on day 1 of pretrial when they have a long history of drug use or substance use. It's an unreasonable expectation. And so what UA testing does is actually quite the opposite. It actually prevents people from getting to court because of these fear-based reasons of not wanting to pursue the case because they're fearful of going to jail. We've also learned in the research that UA testing by pretrial supervision specifically, or UA testing by treatment providers during the pretrial process, neither of those are effective. So even if we're asking treatment providers to do the UA testing, that doesn't make it more or less effective to help people get to court. And then the question is, okay, if these are all the things that we have been doing, we know that detention is not great. We know that there are collateral consequences to detention. We know we want to see more release. And we've released folks in these very specific ways on pretrial supervision, by way of electronic monitoring, by way of UA testing. Why aren't these things working? Why aren't these things helping people get to court more often? And the answer is kind of simple. They just don't address the fundamental reasons why people aren't getting to court. And so there's work that JSP has undertaken and work that Ideas 42 has undertaken to really ask people, why are you not getting to court? And what our research suggests, and it echoes also Ideas 42 research that has been done in Harris County and other spaces, is that there are these 3 big buckets of areas or reasons why people don't get to court. And you can see them on your screen here now. And you'll see that quite honestly, there's nothing here that's probably surprising. You have people that are managing life. You have people that are managing logistical issues. You have people that are managing just kind of their past experiences and trauma with the system. These are all things preventing people from getting to court. So thinking about these kind of life responsibilities, we at JSP conducted research in a county jail in the state of Illinois, and we talked to people specifically in jail on a bench warrant. They hadn't been picked up on a new arrest, and we were really able to ask them, why did they not get to court? And these are really informed from them. And one person said to us, you know, I had rented a room, but then moved, and then I was working night shift, and I'm managing my wife's cancer, and I misscheduled my court. And honestly, court's a really big priority, but I just couldn't keep up with my other responsibilities. And I think here is a really important moment for us as we're reflecting on the pretrial space and what it means to bring equity to front end movement is the idea that we have personalized court absence. We have taken it personally. We have decided that people are thumbing their nose at the court. We're uninterested in taking care of their responsibilities. And I think our research would suggest something completely otherwise. What our research would suggest is that most people get to court as scheduled. And when they can't get to court, it's not because they're absconding, it's not because they're avoiding responsibility. In large part, it's just simply because court is one of many obligations they have to traverse. And unfortunately, they don't have the privileges of working from home or having transportation or having childcare to make it easier to get to their court obligations. We also heard from people that sometimes navigating the Zoom technologies or simply the court itself was hard. So somebody even showed up to court on the day, couldn't find their name on the dockets on the webinar, and then ultimately ended up bailing. And then because of that, they were issued a warrant. So you even have people saying, I did show up, I did try, I really struggled with the technology, and then we're still issuing warrants. And so here's another example of really reframing or rethinking the kind of challenges that people are having in the court space and getting to court. What we're also seeing is that people's experiences with racism or ableism or direct discrimination in the systems is hard and challenging, that people's trauma navigating or working with court actors is hard. And so this person said that they didn't go in large part because the last time they were there, they were embarrassed because they were crying hysterically in the court and they just couldn't bear themselves to experience that again. And ultimately, while we might assign some judgment about these reasons why people are not getting to court, the reality is these are what preventing people from getting to court. And so ultimately, we have to be respectful of those reasons and responsive to them. What we also found in our research were all of these compounding challenges. So in addition to that, we had people really making very specific kind of survivalist decisions. They were saying to us, like, I'm homeless. And this person said, I had to be to get shelter, a bed space that night, I had to be at the library by 2 p.m. And if I wasn't there by 2 p.m., I would have lost my shelter. I tried to call in, but that didn't work. And I couldn't get onto the Zoom platform at the library because I don't have an address. So technically, I don't have a library card. And what that meant for me is that I ultimately had to choose my bed space over going to court. And I think we often see that time and time again of people making these survivalist decisions about why they do and do not get to court. And so really we have to be thinking about that as we're building better support systems. And what's important to these stories of why people are not getting to court is that they're having to navigate these challenges and lacks of resources and past experiences, not just once, but multiple times. For every hearing, they have to negotiate this. And we know that there are not 1 or 2 hearings. We often know that there are 3 and 4 and 5 hearings. And so you can imagine every time they have to come to court, they're having to go through this kind of decision-making process with themselves of, can I do this? Can I not do this? Can I afford to do this? Can I not afford to do this? And the harder part is that we often know that people don't just simply have one court case, but they have multiple court cases. So they're making these challenges, navigating these challenges over and over and over again. And then we see folks not getting to court over and over and over again. And then we take that personally. We don't see the scale of what they're trying to navigate. And as a result, we tend to really just rely on these 3 options, the kind of pretrial supervision, EM, and UA testing. And what we see is this kind of ballooning of pretrial supervision and monitoring. And a lot of that makes it more complicated to navigate all of those hearings when you also have all of these additional compliance metrics related to pretrial supervision. And so as we're thinking about being more equitable in these spaces, what that really means is finding ways to limit EM. It means finding ways to do the least restrictive release possible, prioritizing ROR as much as possible, and changing the orientation of pretrial supervision and monitoring strictly to pretrial support, and really providing true resources to help people navigate all of those hearings. And when we're able to do that, we're able to really take in a real equitable approach to the front end of the system. And a lot of times that looks like text reminders, shelter court, phone programs, virtual court options, not without its own challenges though. Bus passes, finding folks immediate shelter. These are not things that we made up because we think they'd be nice. These are things that jurisdictions around the country are doing and are testing. There's a considerable amount of evidence about how text reminders are really thoughtful and really helpful. But these other programs can also be helpful. And so we want to challenge you all that as you're sitting here thinking critically about these spaces, about your work, that we also think about how we can shift to more support orientation rather than a surveillance orientation in this stage. With that, I thank you all so much for your time and interested to hear from Pima and San Francisco counties.
Thank you, Shannon. That was awesome. And of course, completely relevant information. And I think a wonderful segue as we are going to have our first presentation for today. So from San Francisco, we have the San Francisco Pretrial Diversion Project, an incredible group of innovative leaders in this space. We have David Moroff, who is the CEO of the San Francisco Pretrial Diversion Project. We have Monica Perez, who is the Senior Director of Programs, Tiara Sims, who is the Deputy Director of Programs, and Gerald White, who is the Director of the Judicial Services Team and In-Custody Referrals Program. So with that, I'm just very appreciative of you all being here and sharing your insight and your expertise, and I will leave it up to you to share more.
Hello, everybody. Great to, kind of see you all. Thanks for joining us today, and hello to my coworkers. Just want to get started very quickly with a bit of a foundation. These slides will be available. We're not going to read the slides. We're going to kind of jump around a bit, and so just don't stress out that we'll definitely give you this information so you can look at it. But just kind of for a little table setting. So San Francisco Pretrial has been around for 48 years. You can go ahead. Next, Monica. Thank you. Here's a little overview of what we're going to talk about, a brief piece about the agency, programs, and specialized positions, new initiatives, and outcomes. Good, next. The foundation for us is that we are a community-based nonprofit pretrial services agency. We kind of are steeped in the community. We believe in accountability, but we balance that out with a relationship with our clients and a deep connection to the communities we serve. Again, we'll share these slides, but kind of we come from a space where people are presumed innocent till proven guilty, and we work with our clients to make sure they have the support they need to succeed. Next, please. And this is why we're successful, as far as I'm concerned. As a CEO, we could put a lot of things on paper, but our staff are the bread and butter of why we are a successful organization. You'll see our outcomes at the end, but we're proud that even though we serve a high need and a justice involved population, one of the things that a lot of people on this webinar understand in the pretrial services world is that we don't get to pick who we serve. The courts release someone to us, and then we have to determine what is going to help them get through the court process, the pretrial process. So, we're really built from the ground up around that community and that piece of connecting with clients and being client-centered. So you can see that our staff and our board, our demographics represent the people that are impacted by our local justice system. And again, that's just a critical piece of as people are released to our support, they are identifying with the individuals that are providing them support. And in 2018, there was a big decision in California, the Humphrey decision, that changed our organization significantly. And within months, our population of clients we serve doubled. And that changed us as an organization. So there's a lot of data out there as well that, in the pretrial phase, people can succeed without support. But as I'm sure a lot of other jurisdictions are going through the same experience, when the clients being released to you have a higher level of need, we've had to adapt and therefore create new opportunities so that our clients are successful. So I just want to stop there and pass it on to my team and just say how grateful I am for them. These are the folks that do the day-to-day work that lead our agency. And again, our foundation is our staff, and we just have an amazing team. So Monica, take it from there.
Thanks, David. Hello, everyone. So glad to be here and be able to share more about our day-to-day work and different programs and departments and how they intersect. So these are the 5 main big departments at our agency. Both Tiara and I help to oversee operations and any work, again, that intersects. Our release services include 4 programs, which we'll get into more in a little bit. OR, no active supervision, OR, minimum supervision, our ACM and ICR case management support. We also have a diversion team that is focused on our cases that can be ultimately and hopefully dismissed. There's a few different sub-programs that are within that team as well that we'll get more into. Our judicial services team, which Gerald will talk about a little bit later. We also have a new housing program here on site, which I'll touch on later. And we also have some positions that work in custody with clients, including a Medi-Cal assister and a discharge planning position. This is an overview flowchart that demonstrates the process in which an individual goes through from booking to release. You can see in orange that these are the different opportunities when someone is considered for release, beginning from pre-arraignment, before the DA decides to do with their case, which is based on charges. So the OR team, which I'll explain a little bit more in the next slide, but will review cases as soon as someone is ID confirmed and go ahead and present those cases. If they are denied or not eligible at that time, they'll have to wait until the DA decides what to do with their case and go or dismissed, or they go to their arraignment hearing, which is the second opportunity at which they can be considered for any of our release programs. If they're still denied at that point, there is a third opportunity, which is where our ICR in custody team comes into play, which, like I mentioned earlier, Gerald will get into a little bit later. All of the programs and departments work together and are involved at some juncture in this flow. All right, so first I will talk about our own recognizance team. When I started with pretrial about almost 7 years ago, this is where I started. I joined the team before Buffin was implemented, and so it was a very interesting time. But what our what our OR team does is they prepare the case materials for pre-arraignment and arraignment for the judges to review the public safety assessment and ultimately make a decision on release. They also supervise the lower level needs clients, which is our no active supervision and minimum supervision. No active supervision, they're not required to come in. They're not required to check in by phone. We simply send them court reminders via text, mail, or phone call. And for our minimum supervision clients, they are required to call in twice a week by phone. In 2016, we adopted the public safety assessment in partnership with the DA's office, and now prepare this public safety assessment for everyone that is booked on a new misdemeanor or felony charge. What happens is when someone is ID booked and fingerprinted, our staff work inside the jail 24/7, and they are monitoring the fingerprint log. Once someone's ID'd, they'll look at the charges first, and then they'll run the San Francisco state and FBI wraps. They review them page by page and fill out the criteria in the public safety assessment. We also do a court summary report that shows whether they're on active probation or any other relevant information that the judge may want to consider. A decision is made within a decision from a duty judge is made within, I'm sorry, for pre-arraignment cases, a decision is made within the 18th hour of being ID'd. And just to give you an example from 2022, from 1,700 cases, the average time from fingerprinting to submission to the judge was 2 hours and 32 minutes. And the average time from fingerprinting to judicial decision was 5 hours and 53 minutes. The judges typically have an AM window and a PM window where they're reviewing and making decisions on cases. Okay. Next, I'd like to just briefly touch on our diversion programs. The diversion program is an alternative to prosecution that happens before someone is formally charged in criminal court. It gives the individual an opportunity to have their case dismissed and avoid criminal proceedings. It's usually determined by the DA's guidelines. Typically misdemeanor cases based on charges, individuals with no recent criminal history. In January of 2020, they introduced a new program that tailored to clients who bear parental responsibilities. Sorry. Okay. We also have some smaller programs, neighborhood court, really, these are cases that have been cited and go through kind of a panel and education process where they learn from, their mistake. And it also involves apologizing. It could be maybe a vandalism case or something of low level charges, and have an opportunity also to get that off their record. Once the individual has completed any ordered programming or counseling or community service, this hopefully leads to a successful dismissal of their case. And now for the exciting part where Tiara will get into the details and specifics of the services and resources that our case management team provides.
Thank you, Monica. You can go to the next slide. Yeah, so ACM, assertive case management. This is a very important positions within our agency. The ACM case managers work cohesively to meet the clients where they're at and really supporting clients to navigate through the whole court process. The case managers works with the clients to address things that may come up during their assessments and really connecting them to the appropriate services, which can include internal and external referrals. supporting clients with basic needs such as like food and clothing. If our clients are unhoused, we refer them to our internal housing department for our housing assessment so we can get them placed with some stable housing. And we also have in-house social workers that we refer our clients to as well. While on ACM, the case managers stay connected with the clients regularly, weekly, bi-weekly, to ensure that the clients are aware of their next court dates and offer any support to barriers that may prevent them from getting to court. It was mentioned earlier that the court process can be intimidating for some clients, and we see that a lot with the clients that we serve here at pretrial. They could be intimidated from like either language barriers, past trauma associated with their criminal court case, or even just with the justice system overall. And then we do have continuum of care navigators who really support the clients with this process. They may have transportation issues. We provide tokens to clients, Ubers to clients. We really want to make sure that they're getting to court. And then hotel stabilization. I'll touch base on this more later on, but we have a huge portion of our clients, or in San Francisco in general, has a homeless problem. So we really we provide stabilization hotels to ensure that the client can get rested, take showers, and get prepared for their court hearings. So the case managers really excel at meeting clients where they're at in their current stage to help them be successful in our programs, and overall just trying to reduce recidivism. Monica, we can go to the next slide. And this slide outlines the groups that we have here. So we have several in-house groups. When we consider thinking about data-informed decision-making, Latino group really comes to mind for me, because this group is structured to address the significant portion of clients who we serve that are monolingual and Spanish-speaking clients. So the Latino group really aims to provide a secure and inclusive space tailored to the specific needs of this community. Even some of our staff come with lived experience, and so they bring their personal life experiences to the work, which contributes to a positive turnout for our participants and really helps them really enjoy engaging in the groups that we serve. It enables the clients to connect more deeply with our staff, giving them a better understanding and communication of the needs, and ultimately providing enhanced support to the clients. Next slide, Monica. Oh, this is Gerald. We'll go to Gerald, then we'll come back to me, and I'll talk more about some of our specialized programs.
Good afternoon, everyone. And first and foremost, thanks to all of you guys that are showing up today to witness this participation of pretrial services, and for all of you who work in this space each and every day. Hats off to you all. I want to speak about the ICR program, or the In Custody Referrals Program. Basically what this program is that it's sort of used as what we will term a second look. It's a post-arraignment program that happens when the courts have decided that they are going to deny someone released through any of our other releasing mechanisms, for example, through OR 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 minimum supervision, or ACM. It's kind of utilized as a second look to determine whether or not we can come up with a viable option for release for these more significant, challenging, high-risk personal clients with more high risk and more substantial personal service needs, i.e. being chronically unhoused, having a combination of substantial substance use disorder along with mental health concerns as well. Usually and typically these are clients that have been through other releasing mechanisms that didn't work very well. So this program has been designed to give a little bit more intensive shared case management focus, where we do a little bit more concierge service, as it put, and hand-holding for these particular individuals in order to get them navigated through this court process. There's a risk assessment that takes place, which we actually do in custody. After that, there is a case conference that is held to mitigate any public safety concerns. And then we come up with a very individualized service plan for that particular individual based upon their particular circumstances. We then make that recommendation to the courts, and then the courts will decide whether or not they want to go with that recommendation. And during that process, we engage in a lot of very up close and personal sort of case management services, in the fact that we do a lot of community outreach in this program, be it going to find those unhoused where they are. If they're in their homeless encampments, we have case managers that will go and actually get them to take them back to court. Or if there's some people that they can be placed into residential treatment programs directly from being in custody. And it sort of gives a more individualized service plan for these particular clients. You can go to the next one, Monica. This is the judicial services team. This is a component of our agency that works mostly with our justice partners over at court. And they're probably the most visible part of our agency, in that they are actually every day over at court, assisting the courts with any questions that surrounding any of our programs, and troubleshooting any issues that may arise as far as the compliance for any of our clients that are concerned. It is the largest conduit of the information exchange, I'll put it that way, between our agency, the community, the clients, and the courts. And what that means is that we and the judicial services team are charged with making sure that everyone who's involved in the pretrial arena gets all the information surrounding any of the services that we provide for that particular individual on that particular date in court, meaning that we provide the progress report. We also can answer any questions surrounding any changes that may have happened in any of our programming. And basically, we are the liaisons between all of the different partners that are involved in this pretrial forum, in order from the time that someone gets arrested to the time that they are released. We have some sort of hand in working with this. In addition, their presence is often the reason why that we can foster the immediate engagement in services for a lot of our clients, because it happens at that point during the arraignment process, is that we gather all that information surrounding any of the particular directives that may be given for that particular individual. And we can help explain those directives to those particular individuals and to any of the other partners that are involved in this process. You can go to the next one. Oh, and here we have what is an ICR case study. And basically, this is a demonstrative of the type of cases that are referred to the ICR program. Usually those that are referred to the ICR program are typically have been released through other mechanisms, but without success, being it some sort of lower level of supervision. And as previously mentioned, the ICR program has a much more involved approach to their case management. In many cases, it is that extra guidance and handholding that allows the clients the opportunity and the space to engage in and becoming ready for change. And as this case demonstrates, this case in particular will demonstrate how those efforts can pay off in dividends. Basically, you will all get we'll get the slides and we can read through it in particular. But this particular individual went from being chronically homeless and unhoused, struggling with personal service needs, to being an asset and an advocate and working in the community, giving back. And we have found through our own experiences with our agency that there's a vast resource and a very important resource that comes from those persons and those people that have lived experience. And the relatable factor to the clients that we serve is immeasurable. So thank you, guys.
So next, I'll get into some of our specialized positions. The first one is the clinical social workers. So we have in-house social workers once clients have completed a brief jail mental health screening and they may meet specific criteria. They are referred to our in-house social worker, or they may just have a desire to engage in therapeutic services and we'll refer them over there. The social workers do meet with the case managers monthly to hold case conferences to address any client issues and collectively brainstorm on solutions as a team. And then we have our continuum of care navigators, which is a really unique position, and they play a vital role in reducing FTAs and successfully supporting clients to ensure that they appear at their next court hearings. As I mentioned earlier, in San Francisco, we face a significant homeless crisis, and a large portion of the population we serve is unhoused. So when clients are referred to our internal they're referred to our internal housing department, but even then, homelessness remains a major barrier for some of our clients to attend court. So to ensure, and then also just ensuring a safe place to sleep at night really takes precedence over clients appearing at their court appearances. Their safety and well-being becomes a primary concern, which overshadows the necessity for clients to attend their court sessions. Even just trying to gather up your belongings to bring to court, they don't want to leave it outside. So our continuum of care navigators really come into place in supporting clients in that need. Like I said, when they're unhoused, we have information done at the intake where we ask questions like, where do you hang out during the day? Where do you sleep out at night? And our continuum of care navigators will really go to that location, knocking on tents, reminding clients, hey, you have court, let's get there, even going under bridges and freeway underpasses to make sure that they're finding clients to get them to court. Winding down on time, so I'll kind of go through these quickly. The PTP is a new program, and it's designed to remove barriers to our clients who have access to behavioral health treatment. Also partner with substance use and dual diagnosed treatment programs in other counties to provide clients residential treatment, step down programming, partial hospitalization, and intensive outpatient. And then we also have our strategic partnerships. And this position was structured to establish connections and cultivate partnerships with community-based organizations to improve the quality of care for our clients, so that she makes connections, share them with our team, the referral process, so clients can be able to access additional services once they are done with pretrial services. So sorry to run through that so quickly because we're winding down on time. Thank you.
You're on mute, Monica.
Thank you. So now what I'll cover is a few of our, as you know, many of our positions and programs, release programs are funded through our main contract with the Sheriff's Office, but we have been able to secure outside contracts with agencies to expand our case management services and enhance them. And we found that it's been extremely successful, that having kind of a one-stop shop for our clients, having to, send them to one less place for a resource has really kept them engaged with services. So in 2022, we became an access center in contract with the Department of Homelessness and Supportive Housing. We are able to service both justice-involved individuals as a drop-in center, refer them our own clients, as well as assess folks that are in custody. And the process for that is basically for in-house referrals, the case managers will assess basic needs, including housing, and immediately refer them to our housing case managers to conduct assessments and get them on pathway to finding a place, be it emergency shelter or permanent placement. The folks in custody will submit an action request, and our case managers will go in custody and complete that same process. Another new initiative that we recently were awarded was our enhanced care management with CalAIM. The goal of ECM is to provide individuals transitioning from incarceration, supporting them in all the barriers as they re-enter the community specific to their medical needs. What
we'll also be on site. So that's another barrier removed, where we don't have to, oh, you need to go to this address and conduct an intake with them, or you need to go do your Medi-Cal enrollment over here. So it's another place where we can keep them engaged, and where this can happen on site. We also, as Tiara mentioned earlier, fortunate enough to have been funded by the Judicial Council to provide stabilization housing. We work with a hotel that's 1 block down from our main office, and it serves as emergency shelter or accommodations due to maybe a stay away order. The client may be waiting for a treatment bed, or simply just need a place to rest and wash up before their court the next day. We have access to 16 rooms, and we are also in partnership with the San Francisco Mental Health Association, and are able to have a peer navigator on site at the hotel. And they act as a counselor and are able to provide basic, snacks, food, and hygiene. And so that's also another way that we keep them engaged and, coming back. And another new initiative is our transitional age young adult release initiative. It's designed to connect eligible clients, our youth, our younger clients, with external agencies and case management, really to set them up for aftercare or wraparound services once their case has been resolved. The case, someone can be ordered to pretrial supervision, and then in 3 weeks, their case is dismissed. So we want to be able to provide some sort of connection so that they stay engaged. We strongly believe this helps contribute to decrease recidivism. And from there, I'll pass it back to Gerald so he can go over some of our outcomes.
Yes, in the interest of time, what I will say is that our outcomes have been held up to some vigorous standards established and monitored by outside statistical data collection agencies that specialize in measuring these types of outcomes. And you can see the National Institute of Corrections measuring what matters is one. You can go to the next one, Monica. And here we have what are our outcomes by our programs. And here are some of the results. And as demonstrated and as expected, the trajectory of the rates correlates directly with the levels of supervision, from those less restrictive to those that need a little bit more oversight. And you guys can all take a look at those at your leisure. And there's all of our contact information. If you have any more questions, you can get a hold of any one of us. Thanks, you guys, for letting us be of service.
Thank you so much, San Francisco Pretrial Diversion Project. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you for your insightful information. And for those of you that are engaging in the Q&A feature, keep it up. Please keep your questions coming. The team has been answering questions in the Q&A, but please keep your questions coming, and we will make sure to engage with you. And up next, from Pima County, Arizona, we have the Department of Justice Services Transition Center. We have Kate Vesely, who is the Director of Justice Services, and Doyle Morrison, who is the Transition Center Program Manager and Community Engagement Equity Specialist. So with that, I will turn it over to you guys to share a different context and perspective for the work that you are doing to support in this area. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon to everybody. Thank you guys so much. Hopefully you can see my screen here and hear me okay. And as we said, I've got my colleague here, Doyle R. Morrison, who is over our transition center, which is the main strategy that we're going to be talking about today. So just a little bit about our department. We are relatively new. We operate much in the same way that some of the criminal justice coordinating councils function and throughout the country. We are within our county government, so our elected authority is to the Board of Supervisors. And our department really represents a long-term investment in criminal justice reform that our elected officials have been working toward for several decades now. And I like to call us the Switzerland of the justice system. We are outside the loop of prosecution, the courts, pretrial. And so many of the things that we do where you need a program of some neutrality is where we fit in. And we serve three primary functions for our local government here. First is we have data and information about the justice system. One of our big investment strategies is a jail dashboard that helps to not only identify exactly from a statistical standpoint, but also understanding exactly what's happening to the people that we are serving as they move through the system. We also really invest in transparency, trying to help better educate our community about the justice system. We have policy and research functions that we provide when the board is exploring different justice-related policy strategies, new programs, and certainly financial investments. We're here to help provide information for informed decision-making. And then finally, we've got a number of different justice programs that serve those individuals who are justice system involved. And we write lots and lots of grant programs to be able to bring those funding and resources and innovation into our community. One of those big grants is the MacArthur Safety and Justice Challenge. We were one of the 10 implementation sites, and I see many of our fellow MacArthur sites here today, so hello to you all. So just a little bit of some of the programs that we have here. Certainly not enough time to cover any of these, but if you're curious to learn more about any of these, please feel free to reach out to us or ask us questions in the chat. But we would be happy to talk about any of these programs. We, in addition to our transition center, we have a program that provides cell phones. We've got a program that provides taxi rides away from the jail and to court. We've got a jail population review program and a number of other different innovations. So here we're talking about the transition center today. And I appreciate the motto that they have self-adopted over there: leave better than you came. They want every single person who walks into the door to have something better, something more than what they walked in with. So our objectives around creating the transition center was really about trying to change behavior. It's truly a behavioral economics approach. And this work spawned from the feedback that we were getting from our business community, who was communicating very passion to our local law enforcement, our elected officials, and other business groups that the appearance of having individuals who are unsheltered, repeat low-level crimes like shoplifting, vandalism, trespassing was really at a breaking point for the business community. And working together with these individuals who initially came into our conversation asking for us to just arrest people and arrest people over and over and over again. And so when we are tasked with a problem, the first thing we do is we look at the data. And so that we found that those individuals who were being arrested on these misdemeanors, about almost a quarter of those individuals were rearrested within a certain period. And 27% who were arrested for a misdemeanor were rearrested within a month. So we knew that there was a big opportunity to not only engage with these individuals, but also try and reduce that pattern of rearrest and reincarceration. Because our department oversees the jail data and we have our jail database, we can tell you definitively that when we're looking at individuals who have been arrested, the longer somebody spends in custody, the more likely they are to be rearrested. And the more frequently they're arrested, the more likely they are to be rearrested. This was a very helpful discussion point when we were talking with the business community because when the expectation was, well, if we just arrested them and held them accountable, that would change behavior. And we can tell definitively from the data that arresting folks is not only not changing that behavior, but it's actively making our community less safe. And so that really opened up the door to have a conversation about, okay, well, what do we do instead? What are our strategies around that? And so we're using game theory here. We're looking at how do we provide the right situations, the right tools, the right circumstances where somebody is able to make positive change in their lives. And so the Transition Center is one of these strategies that we're employing over here. And so basically what it is, it's a modular building that's located outside of our jail. We launched it on August 3rd of last year. It's staffed with what we call justice navigators, and they're all individuals who have lived experience in the justice system. We did initially fund it with ARPA, and we are supplementing that work through our Pima County General Fund. And this is really, we view as a continuation to our pre-booking modular strategy, which is intervening with individuals after they're arrested and before they're booked. There is another modular, we love our modulars, in the jail parking lot. And if somebody is arrested with a non-domestic violence misdemeanor, they have to be screened in this modular before they're being allowed to be booked into the jail. It's been a hugely successful strategy for us. Before we started doing this, our jail population was 20% misdemeanors. Now it's down to 5%. However, that is part of the community dialogue of, well, if these people aren't going into the jail, then they're free to go back to the community and re-engage with whatever behaviors ended them up in law enforcement custody in the first place. And so there was some pushback against having that pre-booking modular, and our transition center was the opportunity to prove that having these types of services and interventions is more effective at creating community safety, getting people to court, and reducing that cycle of incarceration than just trying to arrest our way out of the problem, which we all know does not work. So our program is not a treatment on site. This is not intervention. We view it as like being a hotel concierge or an old school telephone operator. We're trying to plug our clients into those services that are most effective and already existing in the community. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, and we don't need to try and gain expertise in areas where the community is already succeeding. And so being a conduit to those resources has been a very successful strategy for us. People walk in the door and it's all about assessing them at that moment to see what they think they need to get at that moment. And as San Francisco mentioned, the community is great about opening up its doors, but it's not always friendly to those who are involved in the justice system. It's great if we can get people an appointment to see a behavioral health provider or get into housing in 2 weeks, but where are they going to sleep tonight? At the point that they walk out the door without a plan is where we're losing them. And so our goal is to focus on that immediacy, that we're getting them somewhere right away, getting them connected to services right away so that they can have that initial support, and that will allow them to access some of those more long-term services. And finally, we collect a lot of data because we want to be able to determine not only that what we're doing is effective, but also what interventions are most effective. And we found by our initial 6-month report that those individuals who were unsheltered when they came in benefited the most from the services that we were providing to them. So we focus on these 3 core functions. 1, information and accessibility. A lot of individuals don't really even understand exactly what it is that just happened to them. There's, like many communities, we have multiple jurisdictions of courts. And so they may not understand that they were arrested in Tucson City Court or one of the other jurisdictions that is close by. And so being able to provide information to them about how to get to court, what's their plan for getting to court, how they can check to see their next court appearance, and trying to remove as many barriers as possible for getting them there. We also want to work with them side by side to figure out what it is that they think that they need most. Is it a place to sleep tonight? Is it access to transportation? Is it getting connected to behavioral health services? And most importantly, as each of our staff members have lived experience in the justice system, they can provide that hope and support and encouragement. I have been where you are, and let me walk with you. Let me help you to come on this journey. So here's where we are located. Up here, the large building is the Pima County Jail. When we started out, that little modular just north of our building here is where folks get screened when they come in from police custody. And now we are working to make sure that everybody can access us, even those who are coming out of jail. And I'll talk a little bit about how we're getting to that. But as you can see, there's this little fence that walks from the release door from the pre-booking modular and goes straight to our modular. We call it the exit through the gift shop, where people who are leaving have to walk through our facility when we're open. And that's been a really great referral source, because what we know is that for the people who walk in the door, about 97% will end up taking advantage of some form of service, even if it's only to sit down and have a conversation with us. So once we can get people in the door, we know that we can do good with it. So our initial target population, as I mentioned, were those folks who got released by pretrial before they got booked into the jail. Now we're working really hard to try and engage with individuals who are waiting for their first court appearance, what we call initial appearances, it's arraignments in other communities. And while they're there, a video is going to play for anybody who walks in the door, and it advertises what help they can receive and how to get there. However, even though we're really focusing on this population, anybody who walks in the door can get help. We've had folks who have come through, have declined services initially, and then thought better of it and called the next day, walked in the next day. So we don't turn anybody away. If folks are asking for help, then we are here to help provide it. So here is some of the strategies that we have. I'm going to try and see if this works and hope that the video will play. Are you guys getting audio?
No, Kate, we're not.
All right. Well, I'm going to post a link to this in the chat and hope that you all will be able to view it at a later time. But it's basically providing that orientation on how to get to the transition center and what to expect there. We've also done a blue line. So as you're walking out of the jail, there is a sign that says Transition Center with an arrow, and then you can follow the blue line to make it over to the Transition Center facility. And then finally, what you see here on this screen is an envelope that we're providing to people who are coming out of custody. You can put your legal paperwork in there. It's a letter-sized envelope, so it's large enough to put all your paper in, and it's got information on not only how to get to the transition center, but what resources are available while you're there. So in our first 6 months of operation, we've had about 416 unique individuals who have received services in some form or fashion. And that has resulted in almost over 500 encounters at this point. Encounters are folks walking in the door or phone calls afterwards, follow-up, whatever communication that might look like. Of those who walk in the door, as I said, 97% are likely to take some form of assistance. More than half of the population we are serving identifies as homeless, and we've got an average age of 39. We have, as I mentioned, a call program that provides cell phones for individuals who don't have one. This enables not only our justice navigators to be able to communicate, but also to follow up with court and if they have probation or pretrial. We have a contract with a taxi service here in town, and we're able to provide taxi transport back home or to treatment providers. And we referred over 100 individuals to some form of substance use treatment. The data is very compelling when it comes to rebooking. Earlier in the presentation, I mentioned that about 27% of folks were rebooked within 30 days. And we're showing about 10% of individuals are rebooked within 30 days. So 90% of the folks who come through are not being rearrested. And I'm going to turn it over to Doyle now so he can talk about some of the success stories that we have been having.
Thanks, Kate. I appreciate it. You guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. All right. I see a north and south there. Again, my name is Doyle. I'm the program manager for the Transition Center and the community engagement and equity specialist. One of the great things that, that Shannon talked about earlier was just really the connectivity. When we're talking about individuals and we're supporting this population, the biggest thing that we can possibly do is to support them and connect with them, to let them know that somebody is there for them and can support them through this process to help make them successful. Because of that, and because of the navigators that are a part of my team and their passion and motivation to work with this population, we've got quite a few success stories. We have a couple up on the screen. Participant by the name of M. We won't use the full initials or full names, but he had just been released from custody after doing about 2 years. We worked with the individual. He came in, he identified that he was ready for change. He didn't want to continue the path that got him there. He was pretty much didn't have anything. So we worked and reached out to different agencies. We did some cross-agency collaboration with our superintendent's office, who has a program called Cycle Breakers, who kind of goes into the jail, works with individuals, does a mentor process, helps deal with specific obstacles like GED, education, and some other specific areas. We worked with them to identify this individual, get him his driver's license, get him prepared for his GED test. Worked with some other system agencies, got him into an apartment, reached out with adult probation to kind of make sure that these things were appropriate for his supervision requirements for probation. And the individual is working, doing well, successful, and is really excited about where he is in this portion of his life, because he doesn't feel that had he not stepped up, asked for help, and received the support that we gave him, that he'd be on this trajectory. And he's really, really appreciative and grateful and excited about where his life is headed right now, and that he's not going to go down the same road that he did in the past that got him to where he was. We have another individual. This one's kind of a unique situation where we had an individual who had just been released from DOC as an adult probation. And once he went back to his home where he believed he was going to stay and continue pick up where he left off, he found out that his significant other, his spouse, decided that she did not want to be part of the relationship anymore. There was somebody else in the house fulfilling his role in that relationship. And pretty much she had given away all his stuff or given it to that other individual. The individual was just distraught. This was just he was seriously distraught, and he was in crisis because everything that he thought he had just been taken away from him. We got him in, we found him a place where we could get him a place to stay. We reached out to some different agencies. We identified that the only thing that he had for support was 2 dogs that his father-in-law had taken custody of for him while he was incarcerated. His father-in-law told him, "I can't keep the dogs got to go." So now this individual has to find a place to stay, meet all the requirements of his parole, do all the things to make sure he can stand on his feet. Plus, there's only 2 things left in his life that he cares about: his dogs. He doesn't have a place for. So we worked with some different agencies, our local PAC here, another with Cycle Breakers again, with our one-stop or our workforce development, to find him temporary shelter, get his dogs temporary shelter in our animal control, our PAC, for a foster system for a while, get him on his feet, got him established with his own apartment, started his education, and got him in the process of getting his dogs back. And so he kind of got established, and we put him in a place where the most catastrophic day of his life, after doing what he was supposed to do and meeting his requirements, he got out. It was just devastated. So we got him back to where he needed to be. We made sure he got the pieces to the puzzle to be successful, make sure he got his support system of his animals back to him. And so now he's on a different trajectory. We even got him a place, employment. He said he loved to cook, and we got him an opportunity to be a sous chef at a local restaurant that gave him the opportunity through Cycle Breakers. And he's working there and he's doing what he loves to do. So it was just a win-win all the way around for this individual through the collaboration of the different agencies we work with, and making sure, and the navigators doing the legwork and working with him to get him to the place where he needed to be so he'd be successful. Both of these individuals are continuing their recovery work and strong in their recovery and doing what they need to do to be successful. So it's just stories like this that repeat in so many different situations to make sure individuals are doing what they need to do, get the support that they need, understand that somebody's here to support them and be there for them at sometimes the lowest possibilities or lowest points in their life, and know that we can support them and be right there to get them to that next level. So we're excited. Our navigators are awesome, and we're doing great work for this population and moving them forward. So with that, I'll give it back to Kate as we continue through the next slides.
So our last slide here just highlights that this is only preliminary work, and there is a lot more to be done. We're really exploring ways to make it easier to get folks to court, to provide emergency shelter, and to make it easier to access services and detox, match, clinic for individuals who are struggling with fentanyl. So if you have any questions, please feel free to email us here. There's also our Justice Services website. I did post in the chat the video, the link to the IA video that we have. And I did want to answer a question really quickly. We got asked how we operate our cell phone program. I said a little bit in the chat there, but we work through track phones, which if you buy 3 months worth of service, they give you a phone for free, which is how we were able to bulk purchase. And let me tell you, trying to convince TracFone that buying 300 phones, you're going to get a lot of questions. Are you the cartel? So we had to provide a lot of proof that we were actually a government organization. So that's how we were able to do that. And we use grant funding to support that program.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kate and Doyle, and David and Gerald and Monica and Tierra. And so I just want to invite, all of our speakers back as we kind of come together and answer some of the questions in the chat, and then also talk through a couple other things. I mean, I think one of the things that's really clear to me when I hear all of the work that you're doing is all of the ways that you're doing something different, and all of the ways that you're meeting people where they are, and really understanding that we need to scaffold our expectations of folks, particularly folks that are navigating challenging dynamics, being unsheltered, unhoused, severe mental health disorders, severe substance use, understanding that they're navigating all of these things at the same time, and really finding ways to kind of meet them where they are to help take care of their court obligations. I think Doyle and the San Francisco team, talked a little bit about, like, sometimes these folks are afraid to leave their stuff and dogs on the street, and that's a real concern for them. That's all they have. And so how do we help them do what they need to do related to the court, but also understand that, that's all they have, and that's who they are, right? So I'm curious then, given that both of your populations serve such a high number of unhoused individuals, I wonder how that even changes the services that you offer, how you connect. I know the San Francisco team does a little bit more. I know you talked a little bit about that, but I wanted to give you some space to talk a little bit more about how you meet them, particularly when they don't show up. Tierra?
Yeah, I can jump in. So we have a referral process. Well, really, the continuum of care navigators really play a big role in this. They connect with the case managers regularly, and like they're assigned to a case manager to work with the clients on their caseload. And so they meet with them regularly, and go into the community and look for these clients and really support and engage with them to bring them back. And like I said, a lot of our staff have lived experience. So it really is easy for them to connect with the client and for the client to trust them to be able to be like, okay, I can do this. I will go with you. I trust you to be able to go to court. And, like it can be intimidating facing the judge and being in the courtroom, but having somebody there who's been through it is a really key factor in supporting our clients who are unhoused to get to court.
Yeah. Doyle, did you want to add something?
I
Or
just,
David?
Please. No, go ahead. Go ahead, David.
yeah, I said one thing is like, it's also really important that the relationships with all of our community partners cannot be understated, because, those relationships, there's just so much trust there, and they also help us find our clients. Like, sometimes when we can't track someone down, we go to the area where they last were and the local provider, and they know. So it's just this constant process. I mean, again, I think it's why it's so important to operate from this community-based lens, because you're there together, all trying to solve the same problem, find support for people that are high levels of need. So sorry.
No, please.
Oh, no worries. Just to kind of piggyback on that, is just, it's been said from some different perspectives that the key to recovery, the linchpin for recovery, is connection. And that connection piece, once an individual comes into our modular and sits down with us, and our peers come with them like, yep, been there, done that, or they identify different characteristics. I can see you're starting to get that itch. I can see the way you're behaving. You've been using this, or you know what? I've been there. I understand that. You're feeling this right now. I thought that same way. And automatically, when they do that, a lot of those walls come down, because they go, oh, this individual understands. They're not judging me. They understand what's going on with me and where I might be. So having that connection to say, hey, I'm not law enforcement. I'm not anybody that holds any authority over you. I'm just somebody who's been in your shoes. So how can I help you get to where I'm at? That connection piece right there, and establishing that initial point of trust, allows us to be able to say, okay, now that we've gone over and identified all these different barriers that you're dealing with, and we've offered some solutions, are you open, and you've chosen a couple? What we'd like to do now is we'd like to continue to check in with you. We'd like to continue to follow up with you. I'm going to reach out to you weekly just to see how you're doing. I'm going to also follow up and make sure you understand that you have a court reminder when your court date is, and make sure that you have a way to get to court. And you know what? If you not comfortable sitting in that courtroom or that procedure by yourself, let's see if we can get an advocate to go with you, or somebody to support you. And then we're going to also reach out to other surrounding community agencies, because we don't want to be duplicative in the work that we do, because we have so many great partners in our community, and we've established those relationships with them, where we can reach out to different agencies that do the outreach into the communities, under the bridges, in the different encampments, that also work with individuals in treatment, whether that's medication assisted treatment, whether that's other type of groups, and do that wraparound connectivity and that coordination of care with those groups. So we surround them with an environment of individuals that don't judge, that are trauma informed, and appreciate them for who they are and meet them where they're at. And that right there in itself allows us that opportunity for folks to say, okay, I'm going to answer this text. I'm going to answer that call. Or have some individuals that may come in and say, you know what? I'm not quite ready to stop yet. I'm going to go back out. But you know what? Here's our card. Give us a call when you come back. And we've had individuals show up a week later, say, you know what? I'm ready. Or we've had individual agencies call us and say, hey, the resource you gave that individual, they're in our lobby. We're doing the intake right now, and say they're ready. So being able to establish that and let them know there are alternatives. We do want to support you. We're here for you. Let's connect and get you to the next point, is really that main piece that allows us to be successful and make a difference in this work.
Doyle, when I hear you and Tiara and Gerald and others talk, what strikes me is your secret sauce are the folks with lived experience, and is the walking in the journey together, just the moral support of being valued and walking hand to hand. And in my experience of working with different jurisdictions, there is some resistance of saying we shouldn't have to do that. and they should know how to get to court. And these are grown adults, and they, these are obligations. This is what happens. And I wonder kind of what the commentary is there to help those sites kind of maybe release some of that, to move to this space where walking hand in hand is not a negative thing, but truly positive.
That's huge, if I may comment on that. When you showed your earlier slides and you talked about the different areas like life responsibilities, logistical issues, and the last one I would just consider trauma.
Yeah.
If you don't have that lived experience to understand, hey, why can't this individual make their court date? Well, they're just trying to figure out where to live and where to be safe tonight and not get assaulted or have everything that they have on their person taken. If that is their core concern at the moment, they're not worried about court dates. They're not worried about showing up for a UA. They're dealing with the basic life skills and responsibilities of survival. So getting the individuals in the different justice agencies and the law enforcement to understand, if you went home tonight and your house had burned down and your boss calls you and says, hey, what time are you coming in tomorrow? You're going to look at them like they're crazy, because you're going to make sure that you have a place for your family and for yourself to sleep tonight and deal with the consequences of what happened. And these individuals are in survival mode every single day. So to get them to be to look at the normal everyday things that we consider life responsibilities and say, why aren't you just responding, or why aren't you being responsible, or why aren't you acting a certain way, is just, in my opinion, is just unrealistic. And we have to meet them where they're at and get people to understand they're dealing with crisis 24/7. And when you add in the piece of trauma and the trauma, how individuals relive that trauma, dealing with law enforcement, dealing with individuals of authority, going through counseling, going through any kind of treatment, and those past experiences, those individuals don't want to relive that, and they're automatically triggered when they encounter those individuals. So of course you're not going to get their best person or their best outcome at that moment, because they're reliving something, and those trauma responses are triggering left and right. So just getting people to understand that, the individuals that work with these individuals directly, and come at it from another perspective and understand the full perspective of how to meet the individual where they're at and have realistic expectations, is huge. And I think more often than not, that's the avenue that we come from when we deal with these other agencies, and we deal in law enforcement, and we deal with individuals that, forgive me, yes, you've got your degree, you've got your education, but you don't understand because you've never been there. And you have to understand and have a little more compassion to be able to really make that connection. So that's just a perspective we look from when we really talk to folks and try to get folks on board for what we're doing.
I mean, Doyle, I think that's so well said. I got goosebumps. You can't see them, but I have goosebumps over here. I think one of the things that is really key is that oftentimes folks that are making decisions about how the obligations of people, setting conditions of court or setting conditions of pretrial, right? Making recommendations for non-compliance or making recommendations for bench warrants. There is a social distance between that person and the court process, right? There is a lived experience regularly those folks do not have. And I think, Doyle, you speak to the need of bringing folks with lived experience to the table when making policies about pretrial, because until you have gone through the court process yourself, being able to navigate that, even well-resourced, is challenging. And I think people who are socially distant, who can work from home, who have a car, who have childcare, who can call a friend, who have housing, who have safe housing, who feel safe day to day, like those things, you don't see the lens, you don't see the world through this other lens, this crisis lens. And so I think that's why having folks with lived experience is so important in the journey of making new policies and kind of letting go of some of the traditional approaches to pretrial.
Yeah, I can do one quick thing. I got a text from one of my colleagues that's on this call, Earl Sims, Restorative Community Solutions, just an amazing community partner. And he made a good point that this is a lever of change. And kind of back to the probation question, like we have people that already have been arrested, maybe been in jail or been diverted or in front of the courts. That's one side of the equation. We need the other side of the equation. We need the balance. these community-based interventions, of people with lived experience, of people who meet them where they are and care about who they are. So, I mean, life is always going to be a balance. So, I mean, that's to me one of the greatest arguments as to why you need these community-based interventions to balance out the other side of the equation that is weighing folks down, because this is potentially one of the most terrible experiences in someone's life, coupled with all the things Doyle's talking about, all the trauma and what's going on just in their regular day-to-day lives. So I think that's just a big point around why we need that in this system.
Yeah, I know that we're at time. And so before that, someone asked for folks, the folks with lived experience that are working in your programs, do you pay them? And are they paid a salary, a living wage? Kind of how does that work?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we have people at all levels, board, executive. There's no one here that's not paid. And we pay a really competitive salary because it costs a lot to live here. Otherwise, we'd have no one working here. So yes, absolutely. For me, lived experience is the same level as a master's degree, or a college degree. I mean, I think we value those things equally because that is so relevant in our work.
Kate?
And when we were creating these peer navigators positions, first of all, I think it's really important that we normalize having individuals with lived experience in every level of this work, that let's not pigeonhole people into these peer positions. The individuals with lived experience, I totally agree with David. It's education like everything else. And you pay for education. Our peers, we knew about the going rate in our local community, what peers were making, and we wanted individuals who were experienced, it's a higher risk environment, unfavorable, unfortunate hours. Sometimes we really wanted to be competitive in this marketplace, and so I don't think it's enough. It's never enough. I mean, I would pay a lot more, but we definitely wanted to come in over market value for what we were doing.
I so appreciate, David and Kate, your commentary that lived experience is experience. It is expertise. You don't have it unless you've lived it. And so I think, your comments are well heard, that those kinds of positions should exist at every level and should be well paid just the same. We could continue this conversation, I think, for the rest of the day. Certainly. I'd love to give you more space to talk about your success stories, to talk about the work that you're doing. I mean, we're so grateful that you all joined us. The PET Network is here really to elevate sites, particularly SJC sites that are doing really innovative work, coming to the table, thinking hard and thoughtfully and meaningfully about equity, and thinking more about how we stop punishing poverty, and we stop punishing poverty early in the system. And I think the minute we can take a step back to see how we've harmed folks in the policies we've created, and depersonalize some of what's happening, I think we'll all be in a better place. So I appreciate you all for joining us and telling us more about your stories and the work that you're doing. Thank you all to the participants who also joined us. We're hopeful we got to all of your questions. We're so sorry if we missed a couple along the way. And then Kimberly, can you let everyone know what they can expect shortly following this webinar?
Absolutely. So just following the webinar, we're going to send out a survey to folks. We want to hear your feedback. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear your insight and what resonated with you. So we'll send out a survey for you guys to just share your insight with us and anything that you would like to talk about in the future. We want to keep the conversation going. And as Shannon said, we could keep talking about this all day. And so we want to make sure that we are touching on the pinpoints that you guys want to elevate. So we'll send that out. Please go ahead and send us your information. And after you complete that, we will send you the site program overviews, our equity in action tool that has actually been helping us to think about how we include equity in this space, some more of the research, and a recording of today's webinar. But again, our panelists, you guys were incredible. And thank you so much for the insight you shared with us and with everybody that's here today. And thank you all for joining. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye, everyone. And if you have any questions, I'll put our email addresses in the chat.